My name is Valentina. I'm 30 years old. I'm an architect living in San Diego, with a steady career and a wonderful man ready to build a home with me. But in the most sacred moment of my life, surrounded by hundreds of relatives, friends, colleagues, and even the media, I had to walk down the aisle alone. At the wedding, when the MC was about to ask, "Who will walk the bride Valentina down the aisle?" the entire hall fell silent. No one stepped forward. My father, Michael, never showed up. No one from my side of the family sat in the front row. I stood still in my pure white gown, the spotlight on my face as I fought to keep my composure. Then I turned, lifted my chin, and walked slowly, step by step, alone, through whispers and confused stares from everyone present. Have you ever felt abandoned, right in the moment when your loved ones were supposed to be by your side? Have you ever been left behind by the very person who gave you life for a reason you could never accept? If you've ever felt that way, leave a comment below. Like and subscribe to follow me, because what you just heard is only the surface. Behind that moment when I walked alone was a chain of hidden truths, unexpected calls, shocking confessions, and a will my father never wanted anyone to know about. I sat frozen at my desk, the wedding invitation still in my hand, never sealed in its envelope. A half-finished design glowed on my laptop screen, but I had no energy left to continue. Outside the window, the golden San Diego evening stretched peaceful and calm. Yet inside me, it felt like someone had thrown open a creaking door and let in a freezing wind. Melissa's message still glared from my phone. "Dad won't come. It's the Napa getaway he promised me long ago." I kept reading that line over and over, as if staring at it could change its meaning. But no. It was clear, blunt, without a shred of remorse. I called my father right after. No hold music, no hesitation. He picked up after a few rings, his familiar deep voice. "Valentina? I just got Melissa's text." He paused. I heard a quiet sigh. "Sweetheart, the thing is, I promised Melissa this trip a long time ago. She needs a break. You know, she's going through a rough time." My grip tightened on the edge of the desk as I forced myself to stay calm. "But this is my wedding week. I understand. But you're stronger than she, Island. You'll be fine." I didn't answer right away. I looked around my apartment, the carefully chosen furniture, the art on the walls reminding me of trips I'd taken alone. For years, "you'll be fine" had become the armor they draped over me, a way to deny responsibility, deny affection. So, because I can stand on my own, you don't need to be there the day I get married. This situation isn't easy, Valentina. Melissa is very fragile. She really needs me right now. And I don't? He stayed silent. I hung up. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there, in the sunlit room, feeling like someone had blown out the light inside me. Lucas came home at the end of the day. He hung his coat on the chair, stepped over, and kissed my forehead. "What's wrong? You look drained." I handed him the phone, showed him the message, and told him about the call. He sat across from me, his expression shifting from disbelief to anger. "I can't believe it. Your dad really chose Napa with your sister instead of his own daughter's wedding?" I nodded. "I know they're close, but this is too much. I thought at least on my wedding day he'd put me first. Just once. I've wanted that since I was little. But I guess I was wrong all along." Lucas took my hand, steady and warm. "Then we go through with the wedding as planned. If they want to come, fine. If not, you'll still walk down that aisle, beautiful and proud, just as you are." I looked at him, smiled faintly, though inside everything was in chaos. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened all the old family photos. One showed me at 7, hiding behind my mother at Melissa's birthday party. Another from the summer I was 14, Melissa sent to camp while I stayed home for tutoring. And then the photo I could never forget, me at 16 standing by the hospital bed, watching my mother, the only one who ever called me her priority, take her last breath. My father wasn't in the room. He was taking Melissa to a therapy appointment because she couldn't handle the scene. From that day forward, it was just him and Melissa. And I was quietly pushed to the edges, like a memory no one wanted to touch. I still tried to stay in touch, sent birthday cards, made holiday calls, but replies were brief, sometimes replaced by a text from Melissa on his behalf. When Lucas proposed, I hesitated for weeks before deciding to invite my family. Not because I forgot the pain, but because I wanted to believe maybe things could be different. I designed each wedding invitation myself. The finest paper, gold ink, every letter handwritten. I sent one directly to my father's house, hoping it might stir something in him that had been buried, and what I got back was a text. I typed one short reply to Melissa. Thank you for letting me know, Dad's choice. No question marks, no complaints. I didn't need more explanations. The next day, I called my mom's sister, Aunt Karen, the only relative from that side who still spoke to me. Valentina? Her voice carried concern. What's going on, sweetheart? I just wanted to ask, if Dad doesn't come to the wedding, would you sit in the front row with me? She went quiet for a moment. I heard her sigh. You don't even have to ask. I'll always be there for you. Gratitude tightened my chest. Thank you, I don't want to feel like I'm walking into life alone. Aunt Karen paused, then said softly, Valentina, you were never alone. You're just walking away from those who refuse to walk with you. I hung up. For the first time in days, I closed my eyes and drifted into peaceful sleep. But it didn't end there. 2 days later, while checking the guest list, my phone rang from an unknown number. Valentina? Yes, this is she. This is Elaine. My name may not be familiar, but I was Michael's first wife. And you need to hear what I'm about to tell you. I froze. That name shattered the ground beneath me. Why are you calling me? Because there are things you think you know, but they were never the truth. I gripped the phone tighter. Elaine's voice was steady, unwavering, and what she was about to reveal would change everything I thought I knew about my family. I sat stunned on the sofa, the phone dark on the cushion after that brief call. The apartment was eerily quiet, even the street noise outside muffled behind the thick glass window. My mind spun memories of my mother's face, my father's cold gaze, Melissa's words, the lonely nights of studying at the kitchen table while dirty dishes piled around me. Elaine said not to trust everything my father told me, that there was a hidden part of our family's history, and I might be the last to know. But before I could hear more, I needed to face the fragments of memory buried deep inside me. I walked to the old wooden cabinet my mother once used to keep treasured things. In the bottom drawer, I pulled out a silver tin box, the only thing I took when I left home at 18, the day I applied to a college as far away as possible. Inside were a few letters from Mom, a broken wooden comb, and a bundle of old photos tied with a frayed beige ribbon. I pulled out one. It was me at 12, hair cut to my shoulders, eyes red and swollen. Beside me was Mom, with a scar still visible on her forehead, the scar from that accident. But what struck me most was that I was sitting in the car. Valentina, was the only one there with her. Melissa wasn't there. She never was that day. I remembered clearly it was a Saturday morning. Mom promised to take me to buy sketchbooks and stop by the bakery near my elementary school. I was so excited. I woke up before dawn, dressed early. When we got in the car, Mom teased me. Why do you always have to be so precise about everything? On the way back, as we turned near Menlo and 6th Avenue, a delivery truck barreled through the intersection. The driver had fallen asleep. I heard the screech of brakes, then everything went black. I woke up in the hospital, wrist in a splint, head pounding. Dad sat beside the bed, phone in hand, never looking at me. At the time, I thought he was worried, but he was talking to a doctor about Melissa, who wasn't even in the car but had panicked when she heard Mom was hurt. She needs special care, he said. She's too fragile. She can't handle the shock. And me? No one asked if I was in pain, if I was scared, if I needed a hug. For months after, I was invisible in my own home. Mom didn't survive the brain trauma. Dad turned her room into a new office. Her belongings slowly disappeared. Melissa was sent to therapy. Dad hired a helper just for her. And me, I cooked dinner every night, washed dishes, studied at the kitchen table in silence, while Melissa blasted music behind her closed door so loud I couldn't hear my own thoughts. I have never told anyone that I once dreamed of my mother coming back, sitting beside my bed, holding my hand, and saying only, "I'm sorry I couldn't stay to protect you." I have never told anyone that I used to set out dinner and place an extra chair for her every night for a whole year after she passed. I have never told anyone that I sat for hours outside my father's room, straining to hear if he ever mentioned me to anyone. But he never did. On his calls, he only mentioned Melissa. Melissa can't sleep again. Melissa hasn't eaten in days. Melissa needs weekly therapy. And Valentina? No one asked. I was a good student. I was always at the top of my class. But no one in my family ever came to my award ceremonies. The day I received a full scholarship to UC Berkeley's architecture program, I placed the acceptance letter on the dining table with a handwritten note. "Dad, I did it." That paper was pushed aside to make room for a coffee cup. Melissa failed her entrance exam for the New York School of the Arts. Dad bought her a vacation on the Oregon coast to lift her spirits. I learned to swallow everything, like dropping ice cubes into black coffee, each one slowly melting, cooling down the hope I no longer dared to hold. Only now do I face the truth. I grew up in a house that was never a home. It was just a concrete structure, calm on the outside, cold on the inside. And the most painful part was that I once believed if I tried hard enough, was good enough, obedient enough, then someday I would be chosen. But year after year, every proof of my existence was pushed to the bottom of their priorities. I walked in that darkness for nearly 20 years, until a stranger named Elaine called and told me, "Michael is not the man you think he island." The photo in my hand began to blur. Not from tears, but because I was gripping it too tightly. I picked up my phone, tapped the number Elaine had called from earlier, and held my breath when she answered. "I want to hear the rest." "All right, Valentina, but sit tight. What I'm about to tell you will make you see everything in an entirely different way." I didn't interrupt. I waited in silence. I was used to silence, but never had a silence made my heart pound this hard. I heard the wind whistling outside the window, as if the whole city was holding its breath with me. Elaine's voice on the other end was steady but not cold. There was something in the way she spoke that felt both strange and familiar, like an old song I once overheard but never paid attention to the lyrics. "Valentina, I was the first woman Michael married." She paused, then continued. "We had a daughter, Melissa." I went completely still. "Melissa is not your biological sister. She is Michael's daughter with me. We divorced when she was 3. A year later, he met your mother, and that's where everything began." I pressed my hand to my chest, steadying my breath. It wasn't the revelation that Melissa wasn't my sister that shook me. I had always felt that distance. It was the way Elaine spoke of the past, so lightly, almost cruelly, as if none of it mattered. But to me, everything was collapsing. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Because I just learned about your wedding." Her tone softened. "I didn't even know you existed until last year, when my mother died and left some old documents. Among them was a copy of a will. Not Michael's will, but your mother's, Clara's." That name pierced straight through my chest. My mother, Clara, the only one who ever looked at me with true tenderness, Elaine continued. She left everything to you. It's clearly written. The house in Monterey, some shares in the real estate company she co-invested in, even a scholarship fund in your name. But have you ever heard anyone mention it? I shook my head, though she couldn't see me. Inside me opened a hollow space. No, I've never heard my father mention any inheritance. He said Mom died without a will. Elaine let out a bitter laugh, part sadness, part rage. Because he hid it. He went to your mother's lawyer after the funeral, claiming the will was invalid since it was handwritten and had no witnesses. But in truth, it was signed before two lawyers. And notarized. The ground seemed to quake beneath me. I don't understand. If you knew, why stay silent? My throat tightened. Because I thought it wasn't my place. But when I saw your name in the wedding announcement, something in me said I had to tell you. Not for revenge, but so you'd know you weren't crazy for feeling excluded. I leaned back, mind packed with questions. Melissa, the one I thought was my sister, wasn't. My father, who always said I was the strong one, had deceived me about my mother's legacy. Not because he needed the money, but because… Why? You said he hid it because of the will. What do you mean? Elaine inhaled deeply before answering. Michael never intended for you to inherit anything. He always favored Melissa, you know that. When Clara died, he feared that if you had assets of your own, you wouldn't need him anymore. He couldn't control you. And, most importantly, she hesitated. I braced myself. Melissa had already been named his sole heir in his financial plans. If Clara's will was valid, it would destroy all of that. My throat went dry. So all these years I lived invisible because they wanted me to stay that way? Elaine didn't answer. I didn't need her to. I closed my eyes. My mother's face appeared, her smile, her soft voice reading bedtime stories. She could never have left me with nothing. Impossible. I opened my eyes, my voice trembling. Do you still have that copy of the will? Yes, and I'll send it to you right away. But I urge you to see a lawyer. Don't act impulsively. Your wedding is close, you need to keep everything steady. I nodded, though she couldn't see. Elaine added softly, Valentina, I don't ask you to forgive Michael or Melissa. But I hope you'll forgive yourself. For ever believing you weren't enough. I hung up. Anger had no place in me then. Only the feeling of being stripped bare like an old coat ripped open, exposing raw skin. Naked, painful, but real. I stood, went to the drafting table, and pulled out the unfinished sketch of the dream house Lucas and I planned. I added a gentle curve to the facade. The colors would be brighter, the windows wider. Inside, enough light so no one would ever have to live in the dark. I would no longer be hidden, not for another day. The next morning I left home before dawn. San Diego was still wrapped in fog, rows of houses sliding past my car windows like unfinished canvases. Lucas offered to come, but I refused. This was something I had to face on my own, not because I lacked support, but because it was time to reclaim what had been stolen in silence. I entered the address of Alfred Green's office into the GPS, the name Elaine had spoken of as the one who once stood by my mother. The office was in a classic red brick building in North Santa Monica, lined with old maple trees just starting to change color. A tarnished brass plate hung by the glass door. Green and Associates, Wills and Estate Law. I stepped inside, gave my name to the receptionist. She glanced at me, then asked me to wait before disappearing into the back. A few minutes later, an elderly man appeared, tall, lean, silver-haired, but sharp-eyed. Valentina, is it really you? I rose to shake his hand. Yes, I'm Valentina Carter. He paused, as if piecing together old memories. You've grown. You look so much like Clara. She had the same eyes. I nodded, my voice quiet. I came to ask about a will. My mother, Clara Carter. Elaine said you were a witness. His expression shifted, like a dry wind passing over his face. He invited me into his office, walls lined with legal books, calendars, and scattered black and white photographs. He sat, opened a drawer, and pulled out an old leather file marked C. Carter, 2008. His hand trembled slightly as he turned the pages. Clara came to me a few weeks after her doctor told her about her serious condition. She never told Michael. She was clear, completely lucid, and knew exactly what she wanted to leave. I stared as he laid out the yellowed papers. He flipped to the notarized page. This is the original. Her signature, mine, and a second lawyer's as witnesses. All valid. I read the bold lines, each one slicing into old wounds. I, Clara Elizabeth Carter, being of sound mind and health, hereby leave all personal and real estate assets to my only daughter, Valentina Marie Carter, including the Monterey house, all current shares in West Bay Holdings, and my savings account at California Federal Bank. I read the words again and again, afraid that if I blinked, they would vanish. Then, why has no one told me all these years? I asked, eyes fixed on the text. Mr. Green exhaled slowly. After Clara passed, Michael came to me. He asked to review the file, then said the family had agreed not to carry out the will in order to keep things simple. He said his daughter was too young to manage assets. He promised to set up a trust fund, but he never came back. I froze. He lied. Mr. Green nodded. I suspected as much. But at that time, I was no longer the legal representative, and no one else came to ask. I stared at my mother's signature, the pen strokes soft yet firm. Her image filled my mind, her hands always clasped when she was deep in thought, the way she fastened her hair with a pearl clip before going out. She had done everything to protect me, and yet the man she once trusted had hidden her last wishes as if they had never existed. Do you still have a copy? I asked. I do. And I'm ready to hand it over to your attorney if needed. I stayed quiet for a moment, then lifted my eyes to him. I'm not sure what I'll do next, but I need to know. My mother didn't abandon me. She fought until the very end to make sure I had a place in this life. Mr. Green narrowed his eyes slightly, nodding with empathy. She was a smart, determined woman. She loved you more than anything. I hope you'll reclaim what rightfully belongs to you. I walked out of his office at noon. The ocean breeze from Santa Monica brushed across my face, cold yet comforting. I clutched the file in my hand. What I felt then wasn't anger, but a clear realization I was no longer that child sitting at the dinner table, waiting to be noticed. I was the one my mother trusted. The one she left everything to, not out of sentiment, but because she believed I could carry it, protect it, and continue it. And if Michael thought he could bury the past with silence, he was wrong. I returned to San Diego at dusk. In my hand was the notarized copy of my mother's will, a document no one had ever mentioned for nearly 2 decades. I set it on my desk, right next to the half-finished wedding album and the printed guest list still unmarked. Everything in my apartment felt unfinished, just like me in that moment, walking out of a frozen dream, still unsure what was real and what I had simply believed for too long. Lucas opened the door, saw me standing still, and walked over, resting his hand on my shoulder. His voice was gentle. How did it go? I turned, handed him the file. He skimmed a few lines, then looked at me, his eyes darkening. This is the truth? I nodded. Mom left everything to me. The house in Monterey, the shares, the savings, all of it. And Dad hid it for 17 years. Lucas squeezed my hand. What are you going to do? I drew in a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. I'll reclaim what belongs to my mother and me. Not with tears or resentment. I'll do it legally. I've already hired an attorney. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Helen Morris, a woman experienced in complex estate disputes. Her office, tucked inside the financial district, was so orderly and quiet I could hear the soft turning of every page. She reviewed the will, reading carefully, marking each clause. When she reached the notarized section, she paused, nodding slightly. The will is fully valid. Your mother followed every legal procedure. We have enough grounds to file for the return of the estate. I'll draft a notice and send it to Michael Carter within 2 days. My heart pounded. She went on. In a case like this, if the other party doesn't respond positively, we can file a civil lawsuit. But I recommend sending the notice first, to give them a chance to resolve it peacefully. I nodded. I don't want revenge. I just want my mother respected. 2 days later, the legal notice was sent to Michael by email, by certified mail, and by express courier. It stated clearly the Monterey house was being unlawfully occupied. It demanded the return of the property to the rightful heir, with a 10-day deadline to respond. I didn't wait for his reply. But 3 days later, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Melissa. I hesitated. I wasn't sure if it was curiosity or some faint trace of the bond I once imagined existed between us, but I picked up. Valentina. Her voice cracked. I don't know where to start, but I didn't know anything about that will, truly. I just lived the way Dad told me to. I never knew that house wasn't his. I sat down, leaning against the back of the chair, listening to her cry. I thought it was the family home. Dad always said everything was his. I didn't know. You have to believe me. I didn't cut her off. I let her speak, then answered slowly. Maybe you didn't know, but you lived there for over 10 years. While I was in college, crammed into a tiny dorm room, eating instant noodles for weeks, you had a whole bedroom with a balcony overlooking the ocean. She sobbed harder. Valentina, I don't deserve to lose everything. I'm not taking anything from you. I'm only reclaiming what Mom left me. If you think something's wrong, you should talk to Dad. Silence stretched. I don't want to confront him. You know how he island. When he gets angry, things turn ugly. I closed my eyes. Weariness washed over me. Then you have two choices, Melissa. Either you come to the wedding and face me and face the truth, or I'll have my lawyer present the will to the entire family at the reception. And then everyone will know exactly what he did. She didn't answer right away. I could hear her ragged breathing on the line. I need time to think. I nodded slightly, as if she were standing in front of me. You have 5 days. After that, I won't wait. I hung up. My hands still trembled, but inside me there was a strange calm, not because I had won anything, but because I finally felt like my mother was still near. Lucas stepped out from the kitchen, handed me a cup of hot tea, his gaze gentle, a silent vow in his eyes. It's going to be all right. I held his hand tightly. No one could say where this would lead. But at least I was no longer walking alone. And I would not let my mother be buried again, neither in memory nor in truth. The rehearsal dinner was held at a small restaurant in La Jolla, right by the ocean, where the sunset painted the water orange and the sound of waves softened the laughter inside the room. I chose the place not for its elegance, but because Mom had loved that coastline. She once told me that if I ever married, she hoped I'd begin that chapter by the sea where the waves could carry away the pain. Lucas's family was all there. His mother sat at the end of the table, her hand clasped tightly around his father's as if she couldn't let go. His sister Ellie, in a pale lavender dress, tried cracking jokes to ease the tension between greetings and appetizers. I smiled, keeping myself composed, though my heart weighed heavy. Melissa hadn't responded since the call. Michael was silent as well. I no longer expected anything. My focus was on those who showed up for me, until the back door of the dining room opened. Everyone turned. A tall man in a silver gray shirt stood there, holding a worn leather bag. He lingered for a few seconds, his eyes sweeping the room before landing on me beside Lucas. I stiffened. A stranger, not on the guest list, yet his gaze carried something unsettlingly familiar. Not because I had seen him before, but because I recognized that look. I'd seen it in my own mirror. He walked slowly toward me. Conversation ceased. Only the faint clink of silverware against china remained. Valentina? I nodded, steadying myself. Who are you? My name is Nathan Carter. I'm your half-brother. Lucas tightened his grip on my hand. I looked at him, then back at the man standing before me, his eyes never leaving mine. We've never met, no, but we share the same father. His voice held no mockery, no bitterness. Just truth spoken plainly. I invited him out onto the terrace. We sat at a small table outside, away from curious stares. The sea air carried salt and dampness into every word. I'd heard my mother mention a man named Michael, but I never thought I'd meet his family at my own wedding dinner. Nathan nodded, pulled a large envelope from his bag. I never planned to show up until I found out who you were. You're Clara's daughter, and I once met her, just once, but I never forgot. I leaned in slightly. You met my mother? At the courthouse. When my mother filed for divorce from Michael, Clara was with him, pregnant with you. She looked at me like I was a memory she wished wouldn't repeat. But there was no contempt, just sorrow. I remember that look vividly. I stayed quiet. Nathan opened the envelope and slid out a copy of the will identical to mine. Same handwriting, same date. I found this in my mother's old papers. I thought it was meaningless until I saw your name. I touched the corner of the copy. So, you knew before I did? Yes, but I didn't know who you were, not until I saw your name in the news, your wedding to Lucas Grant. My mother once worked as a legal assistant, so I knew immediately this will had full legal weight. I lifted my eyes to him. Why are you here? To warn me? To claim something? No. I came because I saw myself in you left behind, treated like we didn't exist. And no one deserves to endure that in silence. I looked away from the will, my chest filling with something strange, not anger, but relief. For the first time, I wasn't the only one. Do you think Michael will show up to the wedding? Nathan's lips curved faintly. He never came to any of mine. Birthdays, graduations, even my mother's funeral. He didn't show. I gave a bitter smile. He's in Napa with Melissa. He has no plans to come. Nathan's gaze hardened. If he doesn't show, then we reveal the will, right at the wedding. Don't let him keep controlling the story with his absence. I went still. The thought echoed in my head like a distant bell. A part of me wanted to keep the wedding untouched. But another part, deep in my heart, longed for the truth to be spoken in the very place where he thought no one would ever dare confront him. I need to think more. But thank you for coming. Nathan nodded, his gaze softening. Whatever you decide, you're not alone anymore. We returned to the dining room. Everyone was still waiting. No one asked questions. Lucas walked over, took my hand, and whispered softly, "You all right?" I looked at him, nodded. In the warm glow of the restaurant lights, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, but an old, familiar strength awakening at last. And it was ready. On the morning of the wedding, I woke earlier than usual. Sunlight slipped through the white curtains of the hotel room, casting a thin, golden layer over the wedding invitation on the bedside table. I sat up, slipped into a white silk robe, and stepped out onto the balcony facing the ocean. The sky was clear, small waves rippled against the smooth sand below. Everything was so calm, it carried me into a long silence, where there were no phone calls, no emails, no probing questions like, "Is your father coming?" or Has Melissa called back yet? No. No one was coming. I had realized that the night before, when my phone screen stayed dark the whole evening, no messages from my father, no blessings from my sister. None of my relatives appeared on the hotel's check-in list. Their silence was the clearest answer. I wasn't sad anymore, nor angry, only weightless, as if the ties between me and them had been untied, though it stung, like skin that still ached as the wound was closing. As the stylist began doing my hair, she spoke in a warm tone. Every bride wishes her father could walk her down the aisle, but not everyone has that. Still, I've never seen anyone step into life as strong as you. I smiled, looking at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was no longer the little girl who sat quietly on the stairs while Melissa was cradled in our father's arms because she's more fragile. Nor the teenager who once left a birthday gift at his door and ran before he could reject it. The one staring back was Valentina, the woman walking her own path. When I put on the ivory wedding gown, lace-stitched by hand from a small shop in Napa, where my mother once took me as a child, I felt her with me. Not in a photo tucked into my bouquet, but in every step I was about to take, in every breath I held in my chest. I stepped out. Lucas was waiting. He didn't ask a thing. He only looked at me, silent, then reached out his hand. I can't replace your father, but I'll be there at the end of the aisle, every second, every step. I placed my hand in his. I don't need anyone to replace him. I just need someone who won't walk away. The limousine carried me to a small church tucked beneath ancient oak trees. Its gray tiled roof, pinewood interior, and golden string lights gave it warmth. I had feared the emptiness of this place if I had to walk in alone. But when the car door opened, music flowed out, familiar faces smiled, eyes bright with joy. I knew I wasn't alone. The MC stood at the podium, holding a microphone, glancing at the printed list before lifting his head, hesitating. Ladies and gentlemen, who will walk the bride, Valentina, down the aisle? The room grew silent. No one moved. Some guests exchanged looks. A few glanced at the empty front row where my father should have been. I didn't wait. I gripped my bouquet and stepped onto the aisle, shoes brushing the red carpet. Each step was a farewell to years I had lived only to please others. Each step was a nod to the mother who taught me to love with kindness, not with fear of abandonment. Guests rose instinctively. Some wiped their eyes. Lucas stood at the end of the aisle, his gaze never leaving me. I walked between the pews, the stained glass light spilling across my dress like waves, no whispers. Only reverence and a quiet emotion filling the space. When I reached him, Lucas extended his hand, and I placed mine in his. The MC looked at us again, his voice steadier. Then, let us begin. I turned to Lucas. His eyes shone as if he understood every wound I carried without me saying a word. When it was time for the vows, I stepped forward, microphone in hand. The entire hall fell silent. I am Valentina Marie Carter. Today, I am not only marrying the man I love, but I am closing a long journey to choose a family for myself. Family isn't defined by blood, but by those who don't leave when everything falls quiet. The people standing here with me are my family. I paused, my eyes resting on the empty front row where my father once promised to sit. I walked into the aisle alone, but I am not lonely, because I carry my mother's memory, the trust of the man I love, and the strength from years of silence. From today, I choose a new family and leave behind those who abandoned me. No one clapped. But in that silence, there was something deeper than applause. It was recognition. Respect. The unspoken voice of hundreds of hearts that understood what I had endured to stand here today. Lucas squeezed my hand. We turned to the MC. We are ready. After the ceremony, when the church lights dimmed, when music and congratulations faded, I finally had a quiet moment with Lucas back at the hotel. My gown still on, makeup smudged, but I didn't care. My phone buzzed nonstop, notifications flooding in. "What's going on?" Lucas asked, handing me a glass of water. I unlocked my screen. On Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, videos of me walking alone down the aisle were everywhere. Some captions read, "The bride walked in silence because her family chose Napa over her." Others said, "The strength of a heart that can stand on its own." I tapped the comments. Thousands of voices. Some brief. "This woman deserves all respect." Others long, sharing their own stories, people abandoned by family, people who had to stand alone on what should have been joyful days. Lucas read with me, his eyes bright. "See? They understand you." I leaned against his shoulder. "But they've only seen one part. They don't know the truth behind it." I didn't want the story to end at the image of a strong bride. Because if I stayed silent, my mother's will would remain buried, the truth about my father and Melissa locked away. I needed to do what my mother hoped to bring light to the truth. I opened my laptop and began typing a public post. Lucas sat beside me, silent, letting me write. "My name is Valentina Carter, the woman in the video of the bride walking alone down the aisle. Many have asked why my family wasn't there. Today, I will explain. 17 years ago, my mother Clara died in an accident. She left a will, clearly stating all her assets, including the house in Monterey, were mine. But my father hid that will, claiming she left nothing. He raised a falsehood to strip me of my legal inheritance. The sister I thought was mine, Melissa, is in fact his daughter from a prior marriage. I don't blame her, but I cannot pretend we grew up in a fair family. I was the child left behind. She was given every priority. On my wedding day, instead of walking with me into the aisle, my father chose a Napa trip with Melissa. That didn't break me. It showed me clearly that I must walk forward on my own path. I share this not to attack, but so those abandoned know. You can still choose yourself. Family is not just blood. Family is those who stay when you need them." I reread, edited a few sentences, then pressed post. Within hours, it was shared tens of thousands of times. News sites picked it up, the bride who chose herself. A women's magazine in New York even reached out, asking to interview me about the bride who walked alone and the strength behind it. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "Thank you," I cried, reading your words. "I too married without family there. Your story makes me feel less alone." Lucas read beside me, squeezing my hand. "You did the right thing. Not just for you, but for so many." I smiled, though inside I knew support would be followed by backlash. And I was right. The next afternoon, an email arrived. Sender, my father's lawyer. Short. Our client, Michael Carter, denies all claims made by Valentina Carter online. Further statements may constitute defamation. I read silently, then forwarded it to Helen, my lawyer. She only gave a thin smile, a common tactic. "But your mother's valid will is in your hands. We have proof. Don't worry." That evening, another message came, this time from Melissa. "Have you done enough? Valentina? Do you want the whole family laughing at me? Dad's broken because of you. Are you happy now? You've ruined everything." I stared at the screen, fingers hovering, then paused. I didn't reply right away. Lucas placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't need to answer with anger. You already have the truth." I nodded, but inside a decision formed. If my father refused to appear, if he kept silent, I wouldn't stop at letting social media know. I would let the entire family, his friends, and colleagues know. Nathan and I had agreed the truth would be heard, no longer locked away. I closed the laptop, leaned into Lucas's chest. Outside, the world was calling me the bride who chose herself. But I knew this was only the beginning. Because before I could truly move forward, I had to face my father, the man who chose to bury truth instead of protecting me. The phone rang close to midnight. I saw the name Michael Carter. My heart clenched. Lucas glanced over, silently asking if I wanted to hear. I drew a long breath and answered, "Valentina." His voice came through, hoarse, tight with anger. "What have you done? Do you realize you've just torn this family apart?" I stayed silent, letting him go on. "Melissa cried all day. She says she can't go outside without people pointing. And me? I can't face the relatives. Are you satisfied? You've destroyed everything." I held the phone away slightly, keeping the storm from swallowing me. When he paused to breathe, I spoke, slow and steady. "I didn't destroy anything. You did 17 years ago. You hid the will, erased Mom's words. I only brought the truth into the light." He gave a sharp laugh. "You think you'll win? You think a little noise online will break me? No, Valentina, you're making a fool of yourself before everyone." I closed my eyes. "If telling the truth is foolish, then what is lying, Father?" Silence. I heard his breath quicken, then the line went dead. Before I could set the phone down, a new email arrived. From Melissa. "Valentina, I'm begging you. Let's not blow this up. I know you have the will, but think this house is more than walls. It's where I lived my whole life, where I had memories with Mom. You can't take it all away. If you agree to share, I promise to split it evenly. I don't want to lose everything." I read, feeling both sorrow and exhaustion. Melissa still spoke of my mother as if she were hers too, though the truth was otherwise. I replied briefly, attaching the notarized will. "Mom had only one daughter, me. I once begged for love, but now I only ask for justice. If you feel wronged, ask yourself why you enjoyed what was never yours." I hit send. It felt like cutting the last thread that had ever tied me down. The next morning, I went to Helen's office. She was preparing the lawsuit to reclaim the estate. Her voice was calm but firm. "We'll begin by filing with the Monterey County Court, including the original will and the notarized copy. Once the case is accepted, Michael has no way out. He'll be forced to appear in court." I nodded, handing her the copy Nathan had given me. "If needed, my brother will testify. He knows all about Michael's previous marriage and can confirm the facts." Helen studied me, her eyes narrowing as if weighing my resolve. "Valentina, are you sure you're ready? They will fight back, they will lie. They'll try to paint you as the villain in the public eye. But once you start, you must go all the way." I answered without hesitation. "I've already lost too many years in the dark. I won't let another day pass like that." In the days that followed, the media didn't stop. Some outlets wrote, "Bride exposes truth about powerful Monterey family." Others ran with, "$1 million inheritance battle and the daughter left behind." Friends and colleagues sent messages of support. Even a few former clients reached out, saying they trusted me more because I dared to stand up for the truth. But at the same time, I also received anonymous hate messages calling me ungrateful or a greedy daughter. I read them all, reacted to none, only saved them as evidence. One evening, Lucas sat across from me, his hand resting on the table, his eyes heavy with worry. "I just want to be sure you're not burning yourself out. I know you're strong, but I don't want you carrying this alone." I smiled, placing my hand over his. "I'm not alone anymore. I have you. I have Nathan. I even have Mom. Through this will. That's enough for me to keep going." He nodded, trust flickering in his eyes. A week later, the case was officially filed in court. I signed each page, feeling as if I was closing a chapter. Helen handed me the final copy, her voice steady. "The process has begun. Michael will receive a subpoena in the coming days. He will have to answer before the law, no more hiding behind silence or lies." I held the papers, feeling both the weight and the release at once. No more pleading calls for affection, no more begging looks from a sister who wasn't even my blood. Now there was only the straight path of justice, and I had chosen to walk it to the end. Alaska greeted us with sharp, cold air and wide skies. From the plain, the snow-capped mountains looked like unfinished paintings, with turquoise glaciers resting between forests of fir and spruce. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, letting the chill sink into my lungs. In that moment, I felt like I was living a dream for my mother, the one who had always wanted to come here but never had the chance. Lucas wrapped a wool scarf around my neck, smiling. Alaska suits you more than I imagined. Your eyes are brighter than the snow. I took his hand. This trip wasn't just a honeymoon, it was a new beginning. I no longer carried the weight of absence. What I carried now was love, and the memory of the woman who trusted me to the very end. On our second day in Anchorage, after a whale watching excursion, my phone lit up with a new message from Nathan. A photo appeared. A newborn baby girl resting in her mother's arms, eyes shut, face peaceful. Beneath it, he wrote, "This is Emma, my daughter. I want you to be her godmother. Will you say yes?" I sat frozen for a long while, tears slipping down my cheeks. Lucas read the message beside me, then nodded softly. "You should say yes. Maybe this is the family you've been looking for." I replied immediately, "Yes, Emma will always have me." Nathan answered with a simple heart. I knew then, even though we had only just begun knowing each other, a bond was already forming not through blood, but through truth and choice. Our days in Alaska passed like a quiet dream. We hiked across ice, listened to the crack of glaciers underfoot, watched the aurora bend like ribbons of green and violet across the night sky. I could almost feel my mother watching, whispering, "You've gone farther than I ever dared." In a small wooden cabin by the lake, I sat down to write a letter to my father. Not to reach out, but to let go. I wrote it by hand, on thick ivory paper, every word deliberate. "Father, I waited years to hear you say I was part of the family, but what I received was silence. On my wedding day, you chose Napa and lies. I chose myself. You once thought I was too strong to need protecting, but it was because you weren't there that I had to be strong. Now I see that strength wasn't for you to be proud of, it was for me to be free. I won't seek love where there is none. I have a new family, those who truly stay. I have Lucas, I have Nathan, and I have little Emma, whom I will protect. I hold no more resentment. I only want to say goodbye. From now on, you are the past, and I am free." I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, but never sent it. I tucked it into the journal I had, brought along a marker of closure. The letter wasn't meant to change him, it was only for me, a declaration that I had finally let go. On our last morning in Alaska, we stood on the deck of a ship watching the sunrise. Light spilled across the ice like a vast mirror. Lucas wrapped his arm around me and whispered, "We'll build our own home, a place that will always have room for the ones you love." I nodded, letting the cold wind brush my face, my heart filled with peace. Family, to me, was no longer defined by blood. Family was those who didn't abandon you when the night was darkest. And in that moment, I knew more clearly than ever, I had chosen my family. Looking back, I wonder how many out there have also been pushed outside the boundary of family, forced to walk alone to find themselves. I chose to speak out, to choose justice over silence, love and truth over clinging to illusions. And what about you? If it were your wedding day, would you stay quiet to preserve a perfect facade, or would you walk alone to protect your dignity? I want to hear your thoughts, your experiences, even your wounds about what family has meant to you. If my story made you see a piece of yourself, share your reflections in the comments. And don't forget to follow this channel so we can keep exploring stories together. Stories about family, about choice, and about how we redefine what family truly means in our own lives. Because sometimes a story isn't just to listen to, it's a mirror for our hearts.